Well, hello there, Megan the Realtor here. Welcome to the PRUSKOP Podcast. This is going to be a long and information-packed solo info dump episode. It's probably going to be around an hour, and I'm going to share with you absolutely everything that I know about MLI Select and what I run through with clients when they're inquiring about MLI Select and purchasing multifamily, what their options are, stuff like that. So what we'll be going through in this video is exactly what is MLI Select. Then we'll break into the 3 qualifying questions on if you are able to access this product and if so, at what level. And then we'll talk about the 3 different kind of acquisitions that you can make using this product. There's really only 3 that I've come across. And then we will talk about the pros and cons of each. I'll also let you know what the capital barrier of entry is in order to get into that kind of acquisition. And then I'm going to be very, very clear as I can be about the risk and the cons. I do believe in multifamily. I would not be a multifamily agent if I didn't believe in it. It is not a coincidence that that is where all wealthy people end up, is multifamily real estate investments. But we need to make sure that you're being smart with your money. I'm going to be clear on what can go wrong, what plan B and C looks like, and if you're able to execute plan B and C. And then I will end off with letting you know, if you are interested in multifamily, what your first 2 steps will be in order to actually start seriously shopping and actually start working towards getting one of these buildings. So let's get into it. CMHC, what is that? So we all know of CMHC, which is the insurance company here in Canada that runs nationally, that insures loans for banks. CMHC is the reason why residential home buyers can purchase homes for as little as 5% down. When you're under, in the residential world, when you're under 20% of equity in your property, meaning you put less than 20% down, it has to be a CMHC insured loan. Otherwise, the lenders aren't going to give you money for it. So if you're under 20%, then you need to have insurance because the banks won't trust lending you money unless it's backed by CMHC insurance. They're looking out for themselves, right? If you're over 20%, then it's an uninsured loan, and that's a whole different conversation. Now, CMHC around 2 years ago came out with a different kind of insurance that is called MLI Select. Previously, they had MLI Standard. Now, MLI Select is what we'll focus on for this video, of course. And the reason why it's become so freaking popular is people are reading these headlines where you can buy a whole apartment building for as little as 5% down. You can get up to 50% or 50-year amortization, and you can get as low as 1.1 DCR. If you don't know what any of that means, let me break it down for you. So amortization is just the actual life of your loan. So just like on your residential house, you probably have a 3-year or a 5-year fixed term, but your amortization is 25 or 30 years. So the term is just for locking in the interest rate, but the amortization is actual life of the loan, right? So just like if you were buying a car and you needed a loan, if you only had a 1-year or a 2-year amortization or term, then your monthly payments are going to be quite high because the amount of time that you have to pay it off is so short, right? Whereas if you got like a full 5-year or maybe a 10-year term or amortization, then your monthly payments are going to be really low, which is going to free up your cash flow from month to month as you get paid. But of course, the con in that is you are going to be losing more money to interest, but the pro is you lose less money month over month. You know what I mean? Like freeing up the cash flow. So that's your amortization. So getting up to 50-year amortization, which I don't believe has been possible before, I think maximum was 40, your monthly mortgage payments are going to be shrunk. So it should free up that cash flow from the income that you're getting from your tenants. And that's why it's so attractive. The second thing that we'll break down is the second thing is the loan to value. There we go. So when I said 5% down, the opposite of your down payment is your LTV, which is your loan to value. So if you put 5% down, that means you got 95% LTV. That's the maximum that's available for any product out there right now, unless you're going into some funky private lending. If you were to put 20% down, that means you got 80% LTV. So your LTV is just the opposite of your down payment. So putting as little as 5% down for an apartment building, you could quite literally get a $2 million building with only $100,000 down. Holy shit, that's awesome, right? Yes, but we need to be careful about leverage, and we'll talk about that a bit later. But that's why that is so attractive, is because it's least amount of capital and maximum leverage. So hopefully you can use the least amount of money possible to make the most amount of money possible. That's the selling point for MLI Select for investors right now. The third thing is your DCR requirements are lower than they have been before in commercial. DCR stands for debt coverage ratio. In a very simple example, let's say that you owe $100 for your mortgage on your commercial property every single month. If you were cash flowing, like your NOI monthly was $110, then your DCR would be 1.1 because you owed 100, but you're making 110. If you made $120 a month, then your DCR would be 1.2. If you made $130, your DCR would be 1.3. So basically, the thicker your DCR is, the more cushion of cash flow you have. But with this product, with MLI Select, they have lowered the expectation from like 1.2, 1.3 down to 1.1. So in a nutshell, the CMHC program is saying you can purchase a building with the least amount of money possible ever before. We're going to give you the longest amortization that has been provided ever before, and we're going to allow you to have the lowest amount of cash flow than ever before. Pretty awesome, right? I think you can see why it can be a little bit dangerous at the same time. But that's how CMHC works. Now, to qualify for CMHC, these are the three questions that I ask everybody. I don't fact check them, I just take them at their word. But these are the three main questions I'm going to ask you. A, what is your experience? If you have experience in real estate already, let's say you're a landlord and you already have like 8 residential properties that you're managing yourself, yeah, maybe your mortgage broker can swing it where they can prove that you already have the experience so you can self-manage your next 8 unit building that you're trying to purchase through MLI Select. So experience is important. Maybe you are a realtor. Maybe you're an accountant. Maybe you're a property manager. Maybe you are a general contractor. Anything like that will add towards your credibility as a borrower, and the banks really, really, really want to know who they're lending millions of dollars to, and they're gonna want to know if you have any experience in this field. Do not fret if you do not have any experience in this field as a landlord or anything like that already. That is totally okay. You can bypass your personal experience requirement simply by hiring a third-party professional, so hiring a property manager that does have the experience that CMHC is happy with. So the experience, it is important, but it's not deal or no deal necessarily to CMHC. It is good to know that as far as property management goes, you can appeal about a year in after your property's been stabilized, so it's been rented for a year and no vacancies for a year. You can present a file to CMHC and say, hey, look, my numbers are doing really well. There haven't been any surprises with this building. We really don't need to be paying for property management. I feel like I've got this. Can I just manage the property on my own now? Because I really don't want to keep losing money to property management. Property management will most likely be between 8 to 12%. I think the median's like 10%, but it can differ depending on who you're going with. So, and that is 8 to 12% of your gross rent. So let's just call it 10%. If your building was netting $2,000 a month, which would be like, I don't know, maybe an up down, not very much money, but if it was only $2,000 a month that you're collecting in rent, then your property manager would get $200 a month. I lost. Oh, yes, the requirements. So your experience. Then the second thing that they're going to ask you, and I'm going to ask you, is your net worth. I only asked for your ballpark off the top of your head. You don't need to prove to me how many dollars you have in which account. I just want to know where you are-ish so I can place you in the appropriate category. Because obviously, if you don't quite meet the requirements, then MLI Select isn't really an option for you. Maybe we'll talk about residential instead, so you can still get multiple units, but on a residential loan instead. So, as far as the net worth requirement goes, you have to have a minimum of 25% of the purchase price. So, if you are targeting a $2 million building, you need to have a net worth of at least $500,000. That $500,000 includes the equity in your properties, including your primary residence and your rentals. That will include any paper assets that you have, so like your TFSA, your FHSA, maybe. It will include any like unregistered accounts that you have, or you have paper assets in there. I don't know if it would count for gold. That's a good question. Like precious metals, basically the equity that you have. Fun fact, only 50% of your RRSP will be counted towards your net worth. Let's say you had $100,000 in your RRSP. As far as CMHC is concerned and the lenders are concerned, you only have $50,000 in your RRSP because in their mind, they know that you don't actually own 100% of your money in your RRSP when you realize your gains and all of that. So in the bank's mind, they're like, oh, really only half of that money in your RRSP is actually your money. So just be aware of that. Questions that I've been asked about the net worth requirement is no, you cannot count the available credit room that you have on credit cards as equity or net worth. That's debt that you could take on, but you haven't. That doesn't count as money that you have. That's debt that you could access. I've been asked this a lot, specifically about HELOCs or lines of credit. Let's say you have a line of credit completely paid off, you have no money on it, but you could get $100,000. You can't claim that you have $100,000 because you have access to $100,000. The third thing that I'm going to ask you is your liquidity. There is a minimum liquidity requirement of 10%. Let's say that $2 million building again. You need to have at least $200,000 liquid or available. If you're not sure if it counts as available or not, or liquid or not, because it doesn't necessarily have to be cash. It could be like paper assets, like stocks or ETFs and stuff like that. The best way I explain it to people is if I put a gun to your head and I was like, hey, give me all of your money that you can manage to scrape up in the next 24 hours, or I'm gonna bang. Well, that's your liquid or available money. So those funds that you have in there is what would we count as your 10% liquidity, or at least how I go through it with people. So basically, in summary, if you want to qualify, you need at least 10% of the purchase price in liquid or available funds. You need to have at least 25% net worth of the purchase price. If you don't quite meet the net worth or the liquidity requirement, you can absolutely partner with somebody that complements you to pass that threshold or exceed that threshold. And then the third thing, as mentioned, is your experience. If you don't have it yourself, you just hire a property manager to substitute that experience for you. Now, let's go into the actual mechanics of how CMHC works and how you apply for those loan or how you even get these amazing things like 50-year amortization, 95 LTV, and 1.1 DCR. There are three categories within CMHC MLI Select, and it's a point scoring system. You can get up to 100 points, and that 100 points is what gives you those three things that I just listed off, like the perfect loan possible. The less points that you get, maybe you only get 80 points, you would still qualify for MLI Select, but you wouldn't get the best of all three of those variables. So let's say you only got 80 points out of 100. Maybe, I'm making this up. Maybe you only get up to 90% LTV, so you have to put 10% down, and maybe you only get 40-year amortization instead of 50-year, something like that. So if you don't hit all 100 points, then you'll get a slightly less desirable insurance product, which will lead to a slightly less desirable loan product. Those three categories to score points are affordability, accessibility, and environmental efficiency. So environmental efficiency, let's start with that one. That's the second most common one. That would be either buying an older building and retrofitting more energy efficient stuff in there. So replacing those crappy single pane aluminum slider windows with triple pane vinyl windows, maybe putting solar panels on the roof, maybe trading out the heating systems for something that's more efficient, swapping out the incandescent light bulbs for LEDs, stuff like that. So if you are renovating an existing building, basically what they're going to do is they're going to test the environmental efficiency, the energy efficiency of the building as is before you do work. And then they're going to test it after you do the work. And based on how much of a percentage or how much of a difference that you made with your updates, they'll determine how many points you're awarded in that category. If you're building something brand new from scratch, they're going to use the baseline as the building code requirements. So, however much you exceed the building code requirements in environmental efficiency or energy efficiency, that's where you're going to get your points from for new builds. The second category that we'll talk about to score points is accessibility. Full disclosure, I haven't actually talked to anybody who has used this or even a mortgage broker that has used this on a loan. So this category is not getting used pretty much at all from where I stand. And the reason is it's expensive and it's kind of niche as well. So accessibility, you would score points by either building a product or renovating a product. So an apartment building that has low light switches, ramps, elevators, wide doorways, low toilets, stuff like that. So kind of helping the handicapped people and the people that need more accessible homes. The third category is the famous one that almost everybody uses, either for all 100 points or for the majority of their points, and that is because it is the cheapest and it is the path of least resistance. For units to count as affordable, here in Edmonton at least, there is a threshold that says the maximum you can charge for rent is $16.65 a month. How they get that number is they look at the census data that they collected by municipality and they figure out the average salary of citizens in that area. And here in Edmonton, I don't know what the number is, but when you take the average salary, times it by 0.3 to see 30% of it, and then divide that by 12, that's the maximum monthly rent that you can charge people. Now, there's two sets of criteria for MLI Select. There's one set of criteria that's required for new builds that is a lot easier, like the requirements aren't as heavy. And then there's the legacy builds, so like the older buildings, and they require a lot more effort. That's, of course, because we want to stimulate more buildings so homes become more affordable. With the affordability section, that 1665 number, to be clear, it's not tied to that dollar figure, it's tied to that 30%. So if the census data gets updated and the average citizen in Edmonton here makes even more money, then you can change how much you're charging for rent up to that 30% mark still. When you are in an older building, 80% of your units have to be under that 1665 threshold. Now, that might make sense. If you're looking at an older building and it's 100% studios or 100% one beds, maybe you can't achieve 1665 anyway. So, for you to be under that 1665 mark, you're not really losing money, no harm done. But if you have 2-bed and 3-bed suite mixes in there, are you sacrificing cash flow? Ooh, we don't like that. So maybe you should be looking more at the energy efficiency sector to score points and maybe only having your basement units count as affordable and kind of splitting your points up that way. So 80% for a legacy building is required to get all 100 points just in that one category. Whereas if you're in a new building, so this would be pre-construction or you're building one yourself, only 25% of your units need to be under that 1665 threshold. This is why it's cool. Most of these infill products that are going on with MLI Select are those like row townhouse ones that are 4 up and 4 down. You've seen those. And if only 25% of your units need to be under that affordability threshold, most of those buildings are 3 beds, 1.5 beds, or 3 beds, 1.5 baths up, and 1 bed, 1 bath down. Only 25% of your units need to be under 1665, so only 2 of your units need to be under 1665. And you're not going to be able to achieve 1665 for the basement units anyway. So most people, they'll just claim 2 out of their 8 units, 25%, 2 of their basement units as the affordable units, and that's what they'll designate. And they'll keep those under 1665. This is why it's cool, because you're not sacrificing any of your cash flow to stay under that threshold to achieve those points. So easy when you're going through the new build route compared to the existing build. Now, something that I need to be clear about, because a lot of people don't talk about this, is if you are designating units as affordable in order to comply to get the points and qualify for MLI Select, those units have to qualify as affordable for the next 10 years. So whichever two units that you picked as affordable, they have to stay under that 30% threshold for the next 10 years. CMHC is giving you the ability to leverage, and they're asking for your help in return to keeping rental rates down. Once again, you can score all 100 points in the affordability category, or you can score points across environmental efficiency, accessibility, and also affordability. So you can do whatever you want with the mix. It's up to you. But maximum 100 points gives you that awesome like trio deal of the LTV, amortization, and DCR. Let's talk about the three different kind of products that people get into when it comes to using the MLI Select program. There's really only three of them. So the easiest way that I usually encourage people to start, especially if it's their first time working with this product, or especially if they are out of the city or out of province, is by going pre-construction. Now, a lot of you listening are going to think pre-construction, oh, that's so risky. Oh, I've seen people in Ontario get burnt because of pre-construction. Ugh. Yes, you are right. It can be risky, and that is why it is so important to have a good builder that you have vetted and checked their references and seen the quality of their work and talked to realtors and other property managers that know that those builders aren't just like pop-up shops, build something crappy in the middle of the night and then claim bankruptcy and move on to the next project. So yes, there is risk involved, but in my opinion, this is the easiest way to break into the industry. New builds are a lot easier to qualify because of those two different sets of criteria. New builds are a lot easier because Canada wants to incentivize people to build more so everything becomes more affordable again, right? So going on the new build, it's easier to get those points. There's also less risk on the capital front as well. Virtually, if we're assuming that you're buying one of those $2 million buildings, you're pretty much going to need around 200K. Like all is said and done, 200K in between the deposit and the closing costs, more or less. Whereas when you break into the other two options, it's a lot more capital heavy. The other thing that I really like about pre-construction is, let's say you lock in the price with the builder at $2 million. The only money that leaves your account once you go pending is probably the $100,000 for the deposit. It's usually 5%. So that deposit will be held in trust. And then you're going to pay for $150 per door CMHC fee when it comes time to apply for CMHC, and you're going to pay $2,500 for an appraisal. And then all of your closing costs pretty much get pushed towards possession day from then. So it's going to be around 100K in your deposits, around 5K in inspection and appraisal if you're getting that done. And then when it comes to possession day, that's when like the last lump sum of like 70K for the lawyer costs and all that crap pops up. So, in my opinion, it's the least capital intensive and it's the less risky. Because if you agree on the purchase price of $2 million and the cost of material or labor goes up, if the tariffs get enforced again and all of that, it doesn't matter to you as the buyer. It matters to the builder. It sucks for them because they're going to be eating away at their spread to cover that difference. But you as the buyer locked in that price, the builder can't come back and ask you for more money or demand you pay for that unless you actually agree to it, because you've already signed a contract. Get out of here, Mr. Builder. I'm not giving you any more money. Sucks to suck for you. You should have ran your numbers better. So that's something that we really like there. Since it's nice and new and shiny, you should be achieving top rents and you should be achieving top quality tenants as well. Since the rental rates are higher, the bottom of the barrel tenants can't really afford to get in, right? So that's pretty awesome. Um, of course, that'll depend on your area. If you're in a D area, then yeah, you're gonna have probably a little bit higher turnover and rougher tenants, but it's just something to be aware of. In general, if you have a nicer, newer, shiny building, you should be attracting nicer tenants and nicer rent rates as well, right? Another reason why pre-construction, in my opinion, is the easy road or the beginner way to go is that the buildings are covered by the new home warranty. Here in Alberta, new home warranty or builder's warranty is mandatory for any structure that's being built. The only exception, as a fun fact, is if you're building like a primary residence for yourself. But we won't get into that. That's just something cool I know. So anything that you build is going to be covered by new home warranty or a builder's warranty. And there's 4 stages to this warranty. There's a 1 year, 2 year, 5 year, and 10 year, and they all cover different things. So in the first year, it's the slang word for it is called bumper to bumper, and it's pretty much all the cosmetic stuff. So your baseboards are most definitely going to crack in some places. There's probably going to be a nail pop or two in the drywall. I don't know, maybe one of the sink faucets loosen up or something like that. So those kind of cosmetic things are virtually all covered under the builder's warranty. You will get a list with the warranty package saying like which items are applicable and which ones aren't. But virtually, so long as you or your tenant didn't wreck something in the place, it was just like the building settling after being built brand new, typically everything's covered by the builder. Then there is the 2 year coverage. It's pretty much just everything in the mechanical room. So if your furnace blows, your hot water tank stops working, if there's ducting that I don't know what can really happen to ducting, but if something's not quite right in the mechanical room, virtually all of that is covered. So that's your 2 year. The 5 year is your building envelope. So this will cover your shingles, your siding, your vapor barrier, your insulation, I believe windows as well, if it was like a problem with the installation. So yeah, there's your building envelope for the first 5 years of it being built. And then the last one is a 10-year coverage. They call this structural, but it's pretty much just the foundation. So if within the first 10 years of you owning this property, there's like a giant foundation crack that's just gushing water in, well, yeah, that will be covered under the builder's warranty. What happens if your builder ghosts you and isn't replying to you to get these deficiencies taken care of? I'll tell you what happens. You would go to new home warranty directly to the insurance provider and you would say, hey, here's my list of deficiencies. Can you get my builder to fix this for me? Then the insurance company is going to reach out to your builder, we'll call them Builder A, and say, hey, you got to get back to this property and fix these things. I went through the deficiency list and 7 out of 10 of them are applicable under the warranty. You got to go and fix them. If Builder A doesn't come back and fix them, New Home Warranty will find Builder B. Builder B will come in, fix those applicable deficiencies, and then New Home Warranty will chase down Builder A until they reimburse the insurance company for having to pay Builder B in their place. So that's something you need to be aware of. Your builder should be the one coming back to fix things, and if for whatever reason they ghost you, the insurance company will find another builder to fix that in lieu, and it's not going to come out of your pocket. At the end of the day, it's going to come out of Builder A's pocket. This is something that I found really interesting. One of my clients actually works with one of the insurers that provides the new home warranty policies. This is something very important that she taught me that I'm going to pass on with you. Thank you, Tracy. She let me know that arguably the most important inspection you are going to get done when it comes to multifamily or any homes, actually, any new homes, is at 11 months of ownership. The reason being is remember how that 1 year is like the bumper to bumper, it covers the most amount of stuff? Getting an inspection done 11 months, so like right before that 1 year warranty expires for those items, get that inspection done, make your deficiency list, and send it both to your builder and to the insurance company. That way it is time-stamped. She said that sending it to the insurance company at the same time as your builder, it's not like going above your builder's head and like tattling on them or anything like that. It's just documenting and time stamping when those deficiencies were recorded. Because what can happen is if you get that 11-month inspection done and you only send that list to your builder and they ignore you, and now it's been 13 months, those claims are no longer valid, which means that if you want to get a lot of that work done, you're now going to have to pay it out of pocket rather than pushing it onto the warranty, which is pushing it onto the builder. So get an 11-month inspection done, send it to both your builder and your insurance company before your 1-year mark hits, and then at least you have it time stamped and you should be good, and you are reducing the amount of money out of pocket you're paying to fix the place up. So in summary, that was a long tangent. Around 200K, the timeline will probably be somewhere between 6 months to 18 months, depending on how far along they are in the build. And yeah, it's turnkey. You should have better tenants. You should be in a better location. Not always. They do build in not good locations. So that's the way I see it. If you're out of town or you're brand new, the mortgaging alone is going to be so different compared to residential. Do you really want to make it an even bigger item to bite off? That's up to you. All right, let's move on to if you were to build your own multifamily. So we're gonna stay with the same 4 up, 4 down building, that townhouse structure. I recommend people have $550,000 in cash or liquid ready to go if they want to go this route. Reason being is you're most likely going to be paying for the land in cash. And if I'm assuming you're building in the West End where it's most popular right now, the land prices are going to be around 375, maybe 400. It can go up, it can go down, of course, but around there. And then you're also going to be paying out of pocket for the demolition, the permits, or the asbestos abatement, and you're going to be paying out of pocket until the foundation is complete as well. You can finance the land with the construction costs, but at the end of the day, CMHC, the insurer, and the lenders want proof that you have put your skin in the game and your risk up front first. So they do have a minimum equity requirement for these construction loans. They're basically saying, I'm not going to trust you with my millions of dollars until you've proved you've already put hundreds of thousands in. Because I'm not just going to give you all of this money. So it is a lot easier just to buy the land in cash because you're going to have that equity requirement anyway. So it just makes it so much easier. Buy the land in cash if you can. Once the foundation is complete, that's when your lender is going to come by and they'll have some kind of an appraiser person or whatever. They're going to take a picture and be like, yes, I can confirm the foundation is complete. And then that's when you get your first draw. You'll usually get your second draw after the rough-ins are done. So your carpentry is done, your plumbing's been put in, your electrical, your HVAC's been ran, your gas, but you haven't boarded up the walls yet. That's typically when you get your second draw. And then you'll get your third draw relatively close to completion, like once the floorings are done, cabinets and stuff like that. So those are the draws that you get. Building on your own, you have a lot higher capital barrier to entry, but the building or the builder is only going to profit like the management fee, and that's usually between like 100 to 120K versus profiting the potential 200 to, yes, I've even heard up to 500K net profit from developing these places if you buy the land cheap enough. 500K is a unicorn number. Please do not expect that to be normal. That is a unicorn number, but it is a real one that I've heard of. So building on your own, you get to keep that spread for yourself. You could either sell it off afterwards, or you could finance it into MLI Select and just keep it as your own. So that's the pros and cons there. It'll still be under builder warranty, just like a pre-construction, because a builder's still going to be building it for you. So yeah, basically it's harder to get in, but you get to keep that spread for yourself, either in equity or in refinancing. The last version that you can get into with the products for MLI Select, the last kind of building you can buy, is a BRRRR building. So this would be you buying a legacy building. This is typically going to be a 1960s, 1970s, maybe 3-story wood frame walk-up, no elevator, probably common area laundry, those kind of ones. We've all been there. Those kind of buildings. So, in my opinion, that is the riskiest way to go. That is what I used to do. I worked for a general contractor that flipped multifamily buildings for private investors. I used to do this. I started on the tools and then I worked up into management and became the project coordinator. So, I know what I'm talking about here. I think this is the riskiest way to go because it is also the most capital intensive way to go. There are a lot of question marks. No construction project ever goes 100% according to plan. And these projects open up a lot of cans of worms. So with MLI Select, typically lenders, actually, I haven't come across a single lender that is willing to entertain buying a building that is below $1 million or lending to you for a building that is under $1 million. That's just too small for them. We're in the big boy industry, and that's a peanut price. They don't want to play around with that. You're just going to have to go into conventional. They're not going to do the work to get you 5% down on that. From the lenders I've spoken to so far. If you know someone who will lend on that, please let me know because I have a bunch of clients that would be interested in using them. So the threshold for purchase price is minimum $1 million. But a lot of lenders have now bumped that up to $2 million. Keep in mind that commercial, once again, is a big boy game. $2 million is still a tiny amount of money compared to the kind of products that they lend on. So they want to make sure that the deal is worth it and that they're making enough money because these files take so long. That being said, most buildings that you want to renovate in order to either sell afterwards and flip or refinance and get the equity out and BRRRR it, most buildings are going to be sub to $1 million. Most buildings you're not going to qualify for MLI Select. And if it is your plan to exit the property, I don't think you should be using MLI Select, like exit the property right away. You shouldn't be using that, in my opinion. And if your strategy is to do the renovations and then go into MLI Select, there's some things that you need to know. Like if you're keeping it afterwards. If you are doing a slow BRRRR, then you can go into a conventional loan. That means that you're going to have a minimum of 25% down, maybe 30%, could be more potentially, but absolute minimum of 25% down of the purchase price. So if that's $2 million, that's $500,000 that you're going to have to put down. That's just to acquire the property. Now, when it comes to construction costs, you can budget anywhere between $10,000 to $60,000 a door, depending on how rough the units are to start with and how pretty you want them to end up. So that's a lot of capital right there. That's just cash out of your pocket. Or if you don't have that cash, you're probably only getting that money from a B lender with higher interest rates. We're getting risky here. So if you're going through a conventional loan, that means that you're doing a slow BRRRR. So that would mean that as tenants naturally turn over, you would upgrade one unit at a time. So the renovations would be spread out through a couple of years. And then after that couple of years, when they've all been updated, that's when you refinance into MLI Select. The risk there is what if CMHC changes their MLI Select criteria before that 5 years is up and now your building for some reason doesn't qualify for MLI Select to the capacity that you wanted it to. So that's a risk there. Now, if you wanted to do like a full gut, like pretty much a flip, so you kick all the tenants out, you'd have to do like cash for keys or something like that. In order to get all the tenants out, you have a completely vacant building that gets stripped down to the studs and stones of the slab. Your electrical gets pulled out because it's aluminum and needs to be updated. Your plumbing gets redone. Your slab gets cracked open because they're adding new drains in for in-suite laundry, if that's something that you're doing. Basically, that is a huge liability. You have a $1 million, $2 million property that isn't making a single penny. It's completely vacant, completely stripped to the bones and you're just hoping that the contractor finishes on time and doesn't go over budget. I have trust issues. Contractors are almost always over budget and almost always over time. So unless you're budgeting for that, you are going to be disappointed from what I've seen. So that's very, very risky to go that way. If that is the way that you're going, the financing that I think you should be getting, speak to your mortgage broker. I'm not a mortgage broker, but you should, in my opinion, be going with a bridge loan because if you locked in at a 5-year term, but your renovations are done in a year, then you're going to owe a pretty substantial mortgage penalty for your bank for killing your term only 1 year out of 5 in. Whereas if you had a bridge loan and it was only a year, well, bridge loans are open, right? They're meant to be temporary, so you don't really get fined for cutting the loan short because the loan didn't have an end date, right? So just be aware of that. I think the main thing that people overlook when it comes to updating these units are that they don't make a lot of this stuff anymore. I've walked through with so many investors that are like, oh, I'll just replace that one piece of baseboard that's cracked. They don't make that baseboard anymore. So either that one piece of baseboard is going to look different than the rest of them in the room, or you have to redo all of the baseboards. That is true for cabinetry. I have called dozens of cabinetry places trying to match cabinet doors because one cabinet door was broken or missing. I'm like, oh, we'll just replace the one. They don't make them anymore. So you have to redo all of the cabinets. That is also true with the hydronic heating. You know those like baseboard heaters that they have? And then if you look inside, there's like a bunch of they're called fins, but that's where like the heat radiates out from, those like little tin foil sheets almost. Those heating cabinets, that's like the covers that they're in. A lot of the times the faceplate or the end caps of them will be missing. They don't make those models anymore. This was built in the 60s, remember? So construction is very risky. You can make a ton of money doing it. Do not get me wrong, but you need to be prepared for it to go wrong. And if it does go wrong, that is not going to be taking food off of your table. It just can be done. You can make a lot of money, but you need a lot of experience, or you need a lot of money that can save you if necessary. I will talk about the acquisition costs though here. So I have a sheet that I'll show you. So this is my acquisition breakdown cost that I have. I ran it through a couple different mortgage brokers and lenders to make sure that these are fairly accurate. So these aren't 100% precise, but when you start looking for how much purchasing an MLI Select product is really going to look like, nobody can give you a straight answer. And that frustrated me. So I did my best to put a straight answer together for you and for myself. So if we go through these costs, this is what you need to be aware of. So as I mentioned before, your deposit, it's just like a residential deposit when you bought your primary home. It's probably going to be a minimum of 5%. Some builders will ask for 7% or even 10% just to weed out the people that barely have that 5%, just to like weed out the less serious or less capable buyers. But typically the deposit is only 5% of the purchase price. For a $2 million building, as I mentioned, that'll be $100,000. So your appraisal is going to be somewhere between 2,500 and 3,500. The last appraisals that I've done with my clients, they've been a lot closer to 2,500, but just be aware of that. Just like there is a deposit for the real estate purchase, there's also going to be a deposit that you send in to your chosen lender. It's the exact same thing. They just want to make sure that if they're putting all of this work into making this deal happen for you, they want to make sure that you're serious about it. Just like with a real estate purchase contract, if the other party cannot complete what you've asked of them to do, you get your deposit back. That's the exact same thing with the lender. The lender isn't able to help you out after all, you get your money back. If the lender locks in a rate for you and then you decide to back out, yeah, they're going to keep your deposit. All right, continuing on here. So the CMHC application fee, this is actually like your actual insurance application fee. It's $150 per door. So if you have an 8 unit, 150 times 8. If it's a 24 unit, 150 times 24. They don't care whether it's a 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom. It's just per unit. The next thing that you should know about is the environmental site assessment. So if your property is 7 units or plus, this is true for legacy buildings or brand new buildings, then you're going to have to get an environmental site assessment. It's going to be somewhere between 2,500 to 3,500. Of course, if you are on a giant apartment building, these numbers are going to be larger, but we're talking mostly about like pre-constructions or like 8 to 12 units here. For an inspection on a legacy building, so one of those older buildings, your inspection is going to be a lot closer to $5,000. And if it's a legacy building, you're going to be enforced to get an inspection. This one is going to be more expensive because it's most likely going to be done by either an engineer or an architect. Reason being is if you're buying a legacy building that was built in, let's say, 1960, it's 2025 now. So that building is already, oh gosh, 65 years old. Yeah, that makes sense. 65 years old. So If that building is already 65 years old and you're applying to get a mortgage product that is going to go another 50 years in the future, how do they know that that structure is even going to be standing for another 50 years? They don't know that. So that's why the bank will enforce that you get an inspection and that they're happy with the inspection to make sure that the roof is okay and the foundation is okay and the boiler system is okay and the windows are all right and all of those like big capital expenditures have been taken care of and that it's really in good condition and that it building is at least going to last as long as the loan will. If you are getting an inspection done on your 8 units infill, so like one of your brand new ones, it's going to be a lot closer to 2000 to 2500. There are different stages of inspections that you can get. I'll go through this quickly while we're here. So you can get an inspection done when it's just the foundation. You can get the inspection done pre-board, which means all of the electrical, HVAC, plumbing, gas has been roughed in, but they haven't covered the walls with drywall yet. You can get an inspection done right before possession just to make sure that all the appliances work and the flooring is installed properly and blah, blah, blah. And then you can also get that 11-month inspection post possession that I talked about. So there are different costs per each level of inspection. A lot of you are going to be thinking, why would I pay an inspector 4 times? That sounds so silly. But I do have a brochure I can share with you that my trusted inspector broke down on exactly what it is he's looking at the different stages. Because to me, I was like, well, why would I pay you like $1,000 just to look at a bare foundation? His opinion was that like the pre-board and the pre-possession one are the most important, and I would agree with that. That being said, I'm never going to deter you from getting more inspections done on your property just to make sure that the builder is sticking to the level of competence that we're expecting them to, because the municipal inspectors for like the permits and stuff, they miss a lot of stuff, unfortunately. Another thing I'll touch on really quickly about inspections that I don't think a lot of people think about is I really think it would be a really good value proposition if by the time that you exit this property, so you're wanting to sell it, if you can provide the seller with the inspection reports that you got done during the build. Imagine you're on the buying side of this and the seller's like, hey, we actually got an inspection done at the foundation stage, at the pre-board stage, at the pre-possession stage, and at the 11-month stage. Now, that might be a little bit overkill on the seller side, but on the buyer side, you're going to be like, wow, this person really took care of their property. I don't think that they would have missed a lot. Like, they did such a good job and they kept records. You're automatically going to trust them more, and you're going to want to see those inspection reports, and you're going to trust that seller. So if you're wanting to be on the selling side of that, use that. Even if it's only one of the inspections, that's going to make your buyers trust you, and that is going to help solidify or urge them to get closer to your asking price rather than their offering price. Moving on with costs here. So these last four here are something that a lot of people never know until it's time to close, and then they get caught off guard. This is why I'm warning you up front. So in the residential worlds, you don't pay your lender and you don't pay your mortgage broker. They make their money because they get a little piece of the spread on what you're paying in interest. So the lender will compensate your mortgage broker. It's not like you pay on top of your loan to pay for those professionals. They get their cut out of the spread already. However, when you're in commercial, and this is true just for multifamily, this is true for industrial, for like warehousing, this will be true for retail, for offices, this is true for all of it. You will pay on top of your loan 1% on average, it is negotiable, but on average 1% to the lender, and on average 1% to your mortgage broker. So you're paying 2% extra in the commercial world than you would in the residential world. Now, some of you are going to be thinking, well, 1% of $2 million is $20,000. Maybe I'll just cut out my mortgage broker to save $20,000. You can. This is what I tell people. I tell them to speak to both a mortgage broker and directly to a lender. Because if your lender can secure you, like directly with your lender, they can secure you a really good interest rate and you have a really close relationship with them already and they're really experienced in this field already, then yeah, cut out that mortgage broker, go directly with them and save 20 grand. However, if you speak to a mortgage broker and they can secure you a better rate than the lender can, and they have more experience than the lender does, and they have a better track record than the lender does, maybe that 20 grand is worth it. So it's not always about the number. It is, especially with the beast of MLI Select, it's really on who is the best team that's going to bring you across the finish line with the least amount of problems. That should be your priority, not $20,000, even though that's a good chunk of change. So just weigh your options there. Don't cut one off simply because of the cost. Look at the value that you're getting over the cost, please. This is the last thing that's very, very surprising for a lot of people as well, is once again, doesn't matter that it's multifamily, just commercial in general, you're going to be paying not only for your own lawyer on closing, but you're also going to be paying for the lender's lawyer on closing. Right? It seems like a ripoff at first, but this is just how business is done. So both of the lawyers are going to be around like anywhere between $9,000 to $15,000 each. These numbers, once again, are just for like a standard 8-unit infill. So if you have a much more complex project or a much bigger project, these numbers are going to be inflated. But this is for the average Joe that I'm speaking to. So yeah, your lawyer fees could be around up to 30K-ish. They could exceed that for sure. It's possible. You need to be aware of this so you're not just slammed with tens of thousands of dollars that you owe on possession day in order to close. That's really scary. So the last thing that we'll talk about here is pre-leasing. CMHC and the lenders do have the right to add conditions on fulfilling the loan. So what that means is they can say, I'm not giving you the money for you to close on the property and take possession until you meet these requirements. And a very common requirement that they are using is the pre-leasing requirement. So the last building I just closed on with one of my clients, CMHC said, we're not giving you the money to close until you can provide us proof, so leases of all 8 units are rented. 8 units out of 8 are rented. He had a 100% occupancy condition in order for them to give them, in order for him to get the money to pay the builder to officially close on the property. So pre-leasing is very important. It won't always be 100%. It can be 0% occupancy requirement. It could be 25%, it could be 75%, it could be 100%, it could be anything. But you just need to be aware. And then also, regardless of that condition of the loan being satisfied or whatever, pre-leasing is so important because getting tenants in there as soon as possible is going to be shrinking your vacancy costs. So whether pre-leasing is being enforced by your lender or CMHC, I do think it's good practice that you should be doing anyway. All right, things that can go wrong. The number one hesitation that I come across with people talking about this product is that you're most likely going to go unconditional prior to you having your certificate of insurance in place, which means you're going unconditional on a loan before you know you can actually, you're going unconditional on a property before you have 100% guarantee that you're going to get a loan for it. So let's go over it. The reason why most of the time you would go unconditional prior to having financing in place is because the sellers don't want to wait that long. Imagine being a seller and you are receiving an offer, and the offer is requesting a 6-month pending period. So it'll be locked up under contract. You can't sell it to anybody else for 6 months, but you also don't know if the buyers are actually going to move forward and buy this thing for another 6 months. Now, builders don't like this, A, because you could be wasting their time and they could be entertaining more serious, more capable buyers within that 6 months. But also, they really don't like this because if you are pitching in with your ideas of you want brown flooring instead of gray flooring, if they start customizing it towards your tastes and then you back out, your tastes aren't the same as everyone else's. So now they have a customized product that's harder to sell and they might have to sell for less. Now you're probably thinking, well, what kind of due diligence are we doing before I blindly remove conditions on this place when I don't even know if I'm going to get a loan on it? Well, we'll talk about the pre-construction route because that's most likely. So we'll most likely be pending for like a month, maybe 2 months. The tightest we could do is 3 weeks just because the appraisal takes time. But you will have conditions on there. You're going to have a due diligence condition, you're going to have a financing condition, and you are going to have a lawyer review condition if you're working with me. So the lawyer review condition, they'll just let you know what kind of risk you're taking on and point out anything obvious that was missed if it's applicable. The other condition that we'll have on there is for due diligence. Due diligence is going to give you the time to run the projected rental rates through a local property manager, maybe 2 or 3 of them, which would be great just to make sure that we have accurate information and that the financials aren't hyperinflated, making it look better than it actually is. So we'll talk to local property managers. You'll talk to, I don't know, maybe contractors if you want to get some tweaks done on the place. The last condition that we have on there is financing. This one trips people up because it's not actually a financing condition, it's just an extension of the due diligence condition. All the financing condition really buys us time to do is for your mortgage broker or lender to review the file for a second time, like right as we go pending, make sure that everything looks okay and they aren't aware of any red flags or any snags that could happen with the loan. And then we order the appraisal. The appraisal's at like $2,500. That takes about like a week, 2 weeks. And then as long as the appraisal comes back at the same price or the higher price of what you offered, then we're good to go. Like if you offered $2 million and the appraisal comes in at 2.1 or 2.3, then yay, you're getting a great deal. A third party thinks that it really is worth that much money. So I'm not the only one guiding you through this. It's a group of people. This is a collaboration of an asset. As soon as we get that appraisal back, the lenders are going to do some rigamajigging, whatever you call that, one last time, just to make sure that they don't foresee any issues. And then that's when we remove the financing condition and we go unconditional. So the biggest worry that I hear from people about going unconditional before you have your COI in place or you have a loan locked down is what if CMHC changes the rules while I'm in the limbo period or while I'm in the leap of faith period? And that's a valid problem because that has happened. CMHC has changed the rules and is very frustrating for the real estate professionals of all kinds because they change the rules before they tell people what rules they've changed. And typically what happens is the lenders will piece together, like connect the dots on which files are getting frozen, and they'll be like, oh, for some reason, all of these kind of structures are not going through. And then later we find out what the change actually is directly from CMHC. Luckily, CMHC has grandfathered everybody in from their changes, meaning somebody put an application in to get their COI, and then a week later, CMHC decided that they're going to start enforcing this new policy. They let everybody in that applied prior to them announcing that change continue with the application under the pretenses that they had before. So that is something good. It is very frustrating though, and it has screwed some people over with a lot of money. The next thing that's going to happen is you're going to pay your CMHC application fee. That's the $150 per door. And you'll usually apply for that 4 or 5 months prior to the projected completion date, so projected possession. Reason being is the application is only valid for 6 months. It's just like a building permit or any kind of permit, here in Alberta at least. If you get an approved permit but you don't use it for the next 6 months, then it just expires, right? It's the exact same thing with CMHC. So usually we want to apply 4 or 5 months prior to possession so that you have 1 or 2 months on the back end, just in case the construction gets or ends up taking longer than you expected, just to have that room on the back end just in case, right? Currently, it's taking about 4 to 5 weeks to hear back from CMHC from you submitting and getting your COI or not back. So that's the timeline that we're currently on that. They are hiring more people and they are changing some things, so that timeline will change, but that's where we're at as of today. Now, let's roll around to possession time. Let's talk about what can happen. So, possession's coming up and we don't have your COI yet, or it's not unconditional yet because you haven't leased up the place, or they made a change and you weren't able to retrofit that change in for some reason. So you're caught. Call it quits, leave the deal, lose your $100,000 deposit and however much you've spent on any applicable inspections, appraisals, etc. like that. You just walk away and lose all your money. All of that was for nothing. You wasted a bunch of time. That is a possibility. The second possibility, which I think both of these are better, you would need to put 25% down. So once again, if you have that 200 or that $2 million building, you're only planning or capable of putting 5% down. But now, in order to not lose that $100,000, you have to put 25% down. Do you have another 400K you can pull from? I don't know. I think you should be prepared to put up to 25% down just in case. You would use a bridge loan if you were really close to getting CMHC. So like if your COI was like right about to come in, or if there was just something that was wrong with your application that needed to be fixed and you were just waiting for like the time delay of the couriers or stuff. So yeah, a bridge loan would be like, hey, we need to close this just for now. It's just temporary. We'll get the proper financing in place afterwards. We're really close, but we need to just bridge this for now so we can close on time. The other thing that could happen is you go into a conventional loan. So let's say for some reason CMHC just isn't an option anymore. Who knows why? That's when you would go into a conventional loan. So that would be a minimum of 25% down. And I think the maximum for a conventional loan would be 30 years. If you go into MLI Select Standard, you can get as low, or I guess as high as 85% LTV, so 15% down, and as high as 40-year amortization. So it's better than a conventional loan if you're looking at strictly how much capital you have to put in. But just be aware of that at the end of the day, you may be required to put up to 25% debt or 25% equity in or down payments in order to save the money that you've already put in. If this is a product that you want to learn more about, that you think would be applicable to you and you're interested in either right away or shortly down the line, then I'm going to give you two pieces of homework, the same homework that I give everybody. Number one, you need to get pre-approved. Saying pre-approved, once again, because it's based on the building more than it is on your personal finances, but you do need to speak to a financial expert. I am not one of those, and they need to look at your net worth, your taxes, your holdings, blah, 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 and they need to determine what your maximum purchase capacity would be, so long as the building's numbers make sense, so that we have an idea of which category of properties we're shopping in. The second thing that I am going to insist that you do is incorporate. You can use an existing one, but this is something that people don't know about, or most people don't know about, is oftentimes when investors purchase a property, they'll have their personal name on the offer as the buyer. So it'd be like Megan Prusco is buying it. And then right before possession, they'll switch the buyer's name to MP Corporation. Let's say that's the brand new corporation I just made. That does work if everything goes well. But if something went wrong before that contract was completed, so before possession date, and it was my fault or the buyer side or whatever, even though I had already switched my name over to MP Corporation, my personal name was on the original contract, so I am not personally absolved of fulfilling the terms of the contract or the repercussions that could come from not fulfilling the terms of the contract. Which means, even though I switched my name over to my corporation, I can personally get sued if the selling side really wants to come after me that hard for whichever reason. So it is very important. I've never ran into this situation. Thankfully, I haven't had to, but I'm just very cautious about this. Get a brand new corporation so that there's no holdings in there for the selling side to potentially come after. And on your purchase contract, have it say whatever your company is, but MP Corporation. And down where you sign, these are the small details that make the difference on who's helping you, like your professional partners. But down where you sign, or where I would sign, let's say if I was the buyer, it would be Megan Prusco of MP Corporations. So it's not me personally signing, it's the representative of the corporation that is signing. And that's the difference. Once again, I'm not a lawyer, but that's basically how it works and how I was taught it. The other thing about being incorporated, that's a fun little nugget that I'll give to you, those people that are still listening after all this time, is if both you are incorporated and the seller is incorporated and both of you guys agree, you can't just like make them agree to it. But if both of you guys agree, typically around 60% of builders will agree to this, you can waive GST. This is something that you need to clear with your lawyer before you write in the terms of the contract. This can absolutely be done. I've talked to my accountant about it a couple times. I've talked to lawyers about it, but not all lawyers like doing this. Basically, some lawyers feel like it's too cumbersome and too annoying, so they don't want to do it, even though they can do it. So just make sure you're with the lawyer that wants to do it and will do it properly for you. It's also important that you keep that piece of paper that says that you did not pay GST on this for next year's tax time, because 5% of $2 million, that's your deposit. That's $100,000 right there that I could potentially save you. But you better believe the tax man is going to want $100,000, right? But you need to have that sheet of paper that your accountant can provide to the CRA that says, I don't owe GST on this. GST is only applicable on brand new buildings. If it's a resale property, it doesn't count. It's just for brand new. But that's something that you should be aware of. Oh, right. Well, that was long. How long was that? Probably around an hour, which is how long these meetings usually take. So I hope you got lots of information. I hope that was beneficial to you. I really hope that helped. So if this helped you, please like and subscribe. That is a lot of information I just provided. And if you have any questions, drop a comment down below. All right. Thank you so much for sharing your time with me. I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye for now.